Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Dude, I Love That. I'm Liv. And in today's episode, we're continuing Shailene Woodley week for the summer throwback Enneagram series. And we're doing Divergent, which, if you heard the Get to Know Me episode, you know this is one of my favorite movies. And Tris is one of my favorite characters of all time. And I'll tell you why in a second. But we're going to be diving into this with not only the main characters, which I usually only try and do main characters, but we're going into some extra characters in this one because I felt like there was a lot to talk about and there was some interesting points with these. So we have a lot to cover. Let's jump in with Tris. So Tris, I think, is a pretty well-known counterphobic type 6. And if you just heard me say counterphobic and you're like, what the heck are you talking about? I'm covering subtypes in this episode, and I'll hit a little bit on tritypes, but not too much, not with every character. And if you just heard me say tri-type, subtype, like what are you talking about? Be sure and check out the Aquamarine episode I just did, as well as the Outer Banks episode. I talk a lot about subtypes and tri-types in various episodes. I kind of try and switch off, like one I'll do subtypes, one I'll do tri-types, but I just covered all of it because I only did 3 characters for The Fault in Our Stars. So that's a ton of info. And the Outer Banks episode is really good for like a beginner one because that's when I was just hopping into it myself and I dive into everything. So if you want to learn more, be sure and check out those episodes. But for Tris, as a counterphobic 6, she is the counter type 6, which means she does not look like or act like, quote, typical type 6s, because when you think of a type 6, you're going to be thinking of a self-preserving 6 that's more on, if they had to choose fight or flight, they're going to choose flight. And the counterphobic 6, they're going to choose fight. And counterphobic 6s often come off very 8ish. I know for myself, a lot of times I'm like, am I just an 8? Like, what's going on? But when I looked at my 8 friends, I'm like, I'm a counterphobic 6. I'm not an 8. And so that's where it's kind of funny, but subtypes are everything. Honestly, I think a lot of people would think that Tris is an 8 just by looking at her actions. However, if we dig a little bit deeper, she truly is a type 6. And that comes out a lot, I would say, in in Insurgent. I'm trying to think of the scene. She's speaking with her mom and she's saying, her mom's like, you're so brave. This is after her mom's died, by the way. This is like she's in the simulation. That's what it is. She's in the simulation talking to her fictitious mom, and her mom says, I'm so proud of you, you're so brave. And she's like, I'm not, I'm so scared. And that's where for me it like just totally clicked, and I'm like, that's it. Oh my gosh, I just love that scene so much. But Tris is so interesting because I think a lot of type 6s, especially if they're self-preserving or social, she would have stayed in abnegation. And the counterphobic 6 wants to go against the grain. They have that challenging side in them and they want to push their limits. And I was watching this with my mom last night just to get a really good in-depth view for you because I wanted to pull out specific instances to relate back to their types. And my mom pointed out, now mind you, she has not seen this movie like since it came out in theaters when we watched it there. And one thing that really stuck out for her was when she sees for the first time the Dauntless kids getting off the train, she said that it was like something lit up in her. Like that was like she just knew that's where she was supposed to be. The energy and the liveliness of that faction totally just made her eyes light up. And so that's where it's so weird being counterphobic 6 because everything in you's like, I want that, but you're also like, how am I going to get that? Like, there's no way. And so you're constantly going back and forth with yourself. And remember, 6s have the inner committee, which relates back to the type 1. The type 1 has the inner critic that tends to berate them when they see wrongdoings, when they see things that don't match up. I was watching a House Hunters episode once, and this guy was like, "Oh, that's crooked. Oh, that lampshade isn't right." Like they have that, right? They pick out everything that's wrong because of that inner critic in their mind, and it varies. Like some people aren't so much that way, some ones are, but the 6, in contrast, has the inner committee, and so what they have is they're kind of the inner committee is scanning the scene and giving them insight and information. So they're picking up on nonverbals a lot. They are, and when I say they, I'm talking about a 6, not the inner committee. I'm not, if you have voices in your head talking like that, that is not being a 6, that is something else. But the inner committee is there kind of walking you through things, right? So it's that voice in your head when you're talking to yourself and you're like, what would happen if I did this? Well, it could go like this, but it also could go like this. What about my family? What's going to happen there? If I do decide to go for this, what would that look like? And so It's the thing that's kind of helping you work through situations. And that's why sixes are so good at problem solving, because they have something in their head where they're already working through it. And so you see that with Tris. She is extremely calculated. She looks at every decision she makes as a chess move. And that's something I kind of talk about that a lot in the 100 episode that I did. And there are different ways of doing this. I said that Clark, as a type 1, she's kind of looking at things and doing chess moves based on right and wrong. I think I said she was a 1. I'm pretty sure. Oh gosh. Now I'm like, did I say that? I don't know. I'm pretty sure I said that though. Anyways, characters in movies look at things as chess moves when they're the main character, but there's something different about Tris. It's the way in which she crafts her sentences, makes her decisions, and she analyzes the situation as how it's going to play out before she does something. So, for instance, in the scene where Eric is like, okay, well, then fine, you get up there and we'll throw the knives at you. She said something because she looked at the situation. She's like, I know that this guy can't handle it. Now, I'm sorry, I'm totally blanking if it was Al or Will who was like, yeah, I'm terrified of getting hit by an airborne knife, actually. But she knows that he is terrified. When she sees that 4 is the one that's going to be throwing the knives, she makes a calculated decision. She says, I know I've garnered favor with him. I trust him, and I know that he can't handle it, so I'll step in their place. That is the most counterphobic 6 thing. And that's something that I have done pretty much my whole life. Like, you just know, even if someone's never said, like, I can't handle it, you just have this knowing. It's like a gut reaction. And that's, again, what can make 6s think that they're 8s, is this like gut feeling of, I know what I need to do. But in reality, it's that your brain, because you're in the head triad, your brain is processing so quickly the situation and playing the situation out that you're able to make a quick reaction that almost feels like a gut reaction, but it's actually all been made based on verbal and nonverbals. So when she's like, okay, 4 is the one doing this, I know he can't handle it, that's when she speaks up and says something. And she knows Eric's personality. He's nuts. He's got bolts in his face. She's like, you know what? I know he's going to make me go up there, but that's okay because it's 4 and I trust him. And so she goes up there and she knows that she's going to be safe with him. She's still nervous because she made a big risk saying something, but she knows at the end of the day, the risk isn't as bad as poor what's his name standing up there. And so everything she does is done with intention. She never says or does anything that isn't intentional on her part. And so that's where I ended up giving her that 5 wing, because she has that researcher mindset. She really does. She is the perfect example of a 6 wing 5. And in certain situations, in stressful situations, I'd say more so, she's able to pull on that 7 wing and make split decisions and lean more on the adrenaline rush of what needs to be done versus the calculated effort. But no matter what, she's always using that 5 to pull the researching, calculating side of her. Another thing, people don't understand that 6s are extremely witty. 6s and 9s are like the wittiest on the entire Enneagram. And we see with her the situation when she's sitting down at the lunch table. This is like right when she gets to Dauntless. She's sitting down with Christina, Al, and Will, and she's got 4 to her side. And they're all talking about, factions, and 4's like, I don't want to hear about your old factions. You're Dauntless now. And she decides to try and bring him into conversation because, look, 6s, they're warm. They want to, encourage and foster relationships. Unfortunately, it didn't quite work out in this situation, but I think this is actually the catalyst for 4 liking her. So she looks over at 4 and says, were you a transfer or Dauntless born? She's just trying to make conversation, totally harmless. And that's when he's like, what makes you think you can talk to me? And you see her go through this thing in her mind. Like, you can see her playing it out, and she's like, must be because you're so approachable. And she didn't necessarily say anything wrong, but she did make a very interesting move. And it could have worked, and he could have been like, ha ha ha, that's hilarious. Or it could have backfired. And it kind of did a little bit of both. I think internally he was like, right on, dude, that was hilarious. But in his reaction to her, he's very much like, watch yourself. That's not okay. And so she's a little on edge, but I genuinely think that 4 thought that was very funny and very witty. And it was also a bold move. She seems so sweet and kind. Not that she isn't, but I think she comes off a little bit more compliant than she actually is. And this is something that is always the case with the counterphobic six. Again, the duality, they're in the compliant stance. Twos, ones, and sixes are in the compliant stance. And so they automatically want to integrate, but the counterphobic six comes out and they want to disintegrate. They don't want to be forced into rules. And, that's again where Eric says we train soldiers, not rebels. She's a calculated rebel. My sister came up with that, and I thought that was so genius. It's true. As much as she wants to integrate, like naturally, she also wants to disintegrate. She's like, too close. Like, I don't want that. Like, I don't want to be boxed in, which feels very sevenish, but that's the counterphobic six for you. They've got so much of that eight in them. And so let's quickly talk about her tri-type because she's a main character. Tris is definitely a 6-8. I'm going to say 6-8-4. I think we're the same tri-type, to be honest with you. And I say I chose 4 because, to be honest, in her, she's always known that she's different. She hasn't been able to fit in. She hasn't been able to integrate. And I think that's where some of that counterphobic came from, is because she was in a place and grew up in this manufactured situation, and she was supposed to present a certain way, but that wasn't her. It just wasn't. And so she couldn't do it. And so, she's always felt like, I don't fit in here, but what am I going to do? I'm stuck. And I think that's ultimately why she made the decision for Dauntless. I think she was like, I can continue being stuck, or I can get outside my comfort zone and actually live. And that's what she chose. And we see her, she's trying her best to fit in with this crowd. But again, she's never going to fully be that Dauntless vibe. She's never going to be that way because you know what I really think? This is a hot take, maybe not, but when they say divergent, if we're looking at the Enneagram, what they mean is actually counterphobic. None of the counterphobic types, I think, maybe there's a few, but generally speaking, I'd say none of the counter types on the Enneagram would be considered right. I have quotes around right for that society. They want people who are going to conform and integrate and whatever and not question. But I think when you don't fit into the mold, which counter types, again, they're kind of the opposite, I guess you could say. No, I wouldn't go as far as to say opposite, but that's the best word I can come up with, of their type. So they don't fit in the mold of their type, right? So that's what I think is very interesting about this. I love doing this kind of stuff with you guys. Oh my gosh. Okay, let's do 4 next. And 4, I was struggling with in the sense that I couldn't figure out if he was a 5 or an 8, because remember, 5s and 8s have a connection to one another. So if he was a 5, he'd go to 8 in health. If he was an 8, he would go to 5 in stress. And if we're remembering, he works in the intelligence department, I'm pretty sure. They tried to recruit him for leadership, but he said no. And then this is the year he chose to. And so I think in a sense, he feels very 5-ish, and especially like his reactions, he's always very calm, cool, and collected. And 8s are in the reactive triad. The types that are the most reactive on the Enneagram are 6, 8s, and 4s. And so that's where I was like, he doesn't seem to react a lot like an 8. He seems more calm like a 5. But again, this is where I had my mom watch because she's a 5. And I'm like, can you tell me, like, what do you think about this? Because obviously they're in this kind of crazy world. They're in a crazy situation. Is he going to present like a typical 5 or a typical 8? Probably not. And so that's where I was like, I need you to watch this and tell me, because you have a strong connection to 8, but you're a 5. Tell me what you think. And so I ended up deciding that he was an 8-wing 9, and she agreed. And, the reasons are, again, sorry, I'm looking at my notes if you're watching on video, but he does the typical 8 thing of taking the quote underdog under his wing. And 8s are known for doing that. They always stick up for the underdog. They always stick up for those who maybe can't handle sticking up for themselves. Even though Tris can, she can't stick up for herself with this situation. She can in other things, and he lets her. But because she can't tell anyone she's divergent, he does feel the need to come in and help her, because this is one of those things where if she does stick up for herself, she's going to get herself killed. And so that's where you see him swoop in, and he finds out pretty quickly, I think. I think he knows very early on, before we even think he knows, because we don't really find out that he's hip to the situation until she's in the second round of training. And she's like, I got out of that in 3 minutes. Like, oops. And that's where he knows for sure. But I think he has inklings earlier on. And 8s are very intuitive like that. And especially because he has a 9 wing. 9s have a little bit of every type, and they are really great at seeing situations in such a different point of view than most types, because they're really getting all sides of the story. They're not just looking at it one or two ways, they're looking at it from every angle possible. And 8s and 9s are very intuitive in terms of they're in the gut triad, right? So, it's kind of like what's the guy from NCIS, the main guy? He's like, he just relies on his gut for everything. Same with Booth from Bones. These people are in the gut triad. They just know. It's intuition. It's the Holy Spirit. It's just your gut, whatever you want to call it. They know. And when they know, they go for something. And so that's where when 4 knows, he's like, okay, this is it. Like, I'm going to protect her. I'm going to help her, whatever I need to do. And even when he stands to lose a good bit, he still sticks up for what he knows is right. And his moral compass, if you will, comes from his gut. It comes from his gut, then his head, then his heart. And so I think for him, the way he makes decisions and the way in which he approaches situations is so different. And we see, for instance, let's do a little comparison. I know that Eric is a 1-to-1 subtype 8. We're not going to cover him in this episode, but I'm just saying for comparison, 4 is a self-preserving 8. And then you have Eric, who is the more hot-headed, because, right, 1-to-1 subtypes are the most passionate subtypes. The 1-to-1 8 is the most reactive, intense type on the Enneagram. And you can see he's like in some lower health levels. He's a little crazy. He's a little homicidal. And so when he comes at things, he comes extremely forceful. He is going to make his way known, and you're going to follow it or else. Where 4, he much more so comes from a stance of authority. And that's where he's able to overpower Eric in his conversations, because he's like, that wasn't the case when you and I were fighting, and lucky for you that it wasn't. And Eric knows to back down to 4, because 4 just has that boldness and that authority. And when you're around someone that has that, you could just kind of know where you fall in line, like under the hierarchy, if you will. The other thing is the 9 wing makes more sense for him because he is very calm and calculated. And again, he can see situations from all sides. But for me, what really pushed me over the edge between a 7 and a 9 for his wing is the fact that he is not easily frazzled. That's it. He is not easily frazzled. He does not get upset easily. He is very calm, collected, calculated. And that's where, if you had the 7 wing, if you're an 8 wing 7, you're going to be a little more fly by the seat of your pants, a little more adrenaline junkie, a little more seeking fun, more energy. 4 obviously does not have the energy levels that another 8 we'll talk about has. And so that's where for him, he does really have that strong connection to 5. And for him, since he's a main character, we'll do his tri type. He is definitely an 8. I think I'm going to give him a 4 wing, or not a 4 wing. I think I'm going to give him a 4 in his tri type too. Ironically, maybe his name is 4 because he actually has a 4 in his tri type, even though Enneagram's not present at all in this movie. But I think that's why he doesn't feel kind of like he fits in. Like, I think he is dauntless. Like, he knows he's dauntless, but inside of him, I think that he feels like he doesn't quite fit in, but he's okay with it. He's so confident and chill and bold that he's like, I might not totally fit in with you guys, but that's fine. And so for him, I do think he has that bit of 4 in him. I think that's where he gets his identity from. And I think that's where, because he's an 8 first, and I say he's an 8 first, a 5 second, then a 4. He has so much stability from the 5 that I think the 8 and the 4 both don't overpower him, if that makes sense. I think he has a really good balance of the emotions, the head, and the gut. Also, we can see with his tattoo, I feel like that's very 4-ish of him. It has the boldness and like the sharpness of the 8. It has the very thought out, methodical process of the 5, but it has the creativity and the sweetness of the 4. So that is all for 4. This is getting very confusing with saying 4 so much. Let's quickly talk about Christina, who I love. I think she's so fun. And she is an 8 wing 7. She is very much the typical 8 wing 7, in my opinion, because what really solidified her wing for me is when she's like, I'm bored. Let's go get tattoos. I'm like, what? Like, no, what in the heck? You don't just get a tattoo for fun. But 8 wing 7s, they are amazing. They have so much more energy than an 8 wing 9. The 8 wing 9 is called the bear. The 8 wing 7, I believe, is called the maverick. A little foreshadowing to an episode coming up. I don't know, maybe. Wink, wink. Anyways, Christina because obviously I'm taking into account that she's from Candor, but she always speaks what's on her mind. And I think the biggest thing we see is when she first meets 4 and she's like, what, we're 1 through 3 taken? That is a very 8-wing-7 move. That was sick. It was cool, but 4 did not take well to it. And that's where like 8s can really clash. 8s and 8s don't normally get along. And we see a lot of 8s in this movie because we're in Dauntless. 8s are going to be prone to going to Dauntless. Oh my gosh, should I do a really quick breakdown of what types would be likely to go into each faction? I'm going to do it at the end. Okay, so anyways, Christina, always up for fun. She is definitely a challenger. She is very blunt and honest, and she's a little bit less on the kind, blunt side than others. Some 8s can come off a little bit more kind in their bluntness, but Christina, remember, she grew up in the situation where everyone was that way. So she doesn't really think to be like, maybe I should sugarcoat it a little bit. It just comes out, but it's great. Okay, let's do Peter. Oh my gosh. First of all, I love Miles Teller. I think he's fantastic. And again, maybe another foreshadowing. I don't know, potentially. I was so excited to type his character because he always tends to play 3s. And I had this conversation on my Instagram the other day, my Hey, It's Liv Jane's Instagram. And I was talking about people that tend to play certain types of movies. So I was saying like Ty Sheridan, who I love, and Dylan O'Brien typically play 6s, and Ty also will play like 9s. And Miles typically plays 3s, and they're always really funny. He's always kind of that very quick-witted, sharp, honest 3. And that's something where I think he could almost come across 8ish in a lot of his films, but he's definitely a 3 because of the way that he positions things. And especially in this movie, I'm sorry, positions conversations. That's what I'm trying to say. But in this movie, he is 100% willing to blow off what he knows is right in order to get on the team that's going to win. And that's a 3 move, man. They're looking at like, okay, where can I go that's going to get me directly and the quickest, easiest, best way to where I want to go. They're goal oriented. They know what they want and they're going to go after it. And they're more likely to step on other people in order to get there than, for instance, an 8. An 8 might just bluster through and go for it, but they're not intentionally trying to like step on other people to get to where they need to go. The 3 is more likely to step on you to get to where they need to go if they're in that mindset. That's not to say that all 3s are like horrible. You know what I'm saying? Peter's obviously not the greatest, but that's because they're in this crazy world and this is literally like a cutthroat situation. So when you think about it, if you're in a cutthroat situation, you got to step on some people. It's just going to happen. So he's taken that on very literally. I saw on IMDb, my favorite website in the world, that there was a scene where he stabs some dude with a butter knife in the eyeball, and that's what like knocks him out and like knocks Peter up in the standings or bumps him up in the standings. And so, you know, he's like, and he's one of the ones that tries to push Triss over the edge. And he lives, and I think this is something that people don't understand about 3s. 3s live in a very dog eat dog world. You know, they realize the stakes of their situation and make their decisions based off of that. And so for Peter, he is looking a few steps ahead and going, okay, how is this going to play out, right? He's pulling on that 6 because 6 has a connection to 3 as well. 6, 9, and 3 all have a connection to one another. And he's pulling on that 6 and using that in order to figure out, now, if I do this, how's this going to play out? Or if so-and-so does this and they end up here, how is that going to affect me? So he's using these things to make his decisions. And granted, they're not the best decisions, you know, sometimes, but he is playing the game. We see in the second movie as well, you know, he sells out his friends, or maybe not friends, but you know what I'm saying. He sells them out and is like, hey, they're up here, and wants to really get to safety. And people don't understand that about 3s so much. I think they look at it as they're just like ladder climbers. It's like, no, 3s really do want safety, whether that's securing a position at work so they can be secure financially, whether it's securing a relationship, whether it's, you know, whatever, fill in the blank. He's looking at, my life's in danger. I need to get the winning team so that I won't die, basically, or so that I won't be homeless and die. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, for him, he's looking at everything with a very intense point of view. And frankly, that is the situation. Like, it is as bad as he's making it out to be, but the way he's going about it isn't morally correct, but you know, whatever. And I chose that 4-wing for him because he does believe that he is exempt from following the same rules that everybody else has to follow. And this is the thing that you'll see with 4s. You know, they kind of think that they're on like a different field than everybody else. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. They have a rich inner world. They don't feel like they fit in. They feel like they are extremely individualistic, that they are very different, that they are set apart and special, which look, everybody's set apart and special, but the 4 truly lives in that identity. And so they kind of in a way feel like the rules of society don't apply to them because they're in a different place, if that makes sense. And 4s, if that's you, I want you to chime in, let me know what you think about that, or if there's a better way to explain it, let me know. This is just what I'm saying from my research and 4s I've talked to. So he does truly think that he's kind of on a different level. And also 3-wing 4s are going to be a little more prone to narcissistic behavior than a 3-wing 2. 3-wing 2s definitely can as well, but the 3-wing 4, because remember, the 3's passion is deceit, the 4's passion is envy. So deceit and envy together, in a lower health level, that's going to be a problem. And so we see with him, he definitely has that deceit. He's trying to work the system, and he's going to turn on you even before you know it. And the 4 part of him is like, I envy Tris. That's why he's going after her, because he envies her. He's like, why is she getting through this so easily? Why does she have favor with 4? What's going on? And so he truly is jealous of her. And that's why he comes at her so hard with the thing about, oh, I heard abnegation's like, mistreating their kids. So again, that is why Peter is a 3-wing 4. Really enjoy his character. So much fun. Okay, Janine. Ay, ay, ay. This lady. So for reference, I'm not saying this about all type 1s. I'm saying this about certain ones who are in lower health levels and have not been doing their work. Janine is a 1-wing 2. Now, the situation with this is, remember, 1s want to bring about perfection. They want to bring about order. They want to bring about rightness and goodness. Janine believes that she has identified where things are not right, with abnegation ruling the government kind of thing. So she's taken it upon herself to fix it, except she's doing it in the wrong ways. There were other ways to go about it, and she's decided not to do it that way. And so for her, she's become a dictator, basically. And everything that she's doing is in a way that is kind of like, don't let your right hand know what your left hand's up to. I think I said that quote right, but if not, whatever. So even though she wants to be right and upstanding, everything she's doing is completely not right and not upstanding. So it's kind of funny. You think that 1s would never do something, quote, evil, but sometimes they do evil things out of trying to do things right, if that makes sense. So that's where 1s have to make sure that they're doing things for the right reasons. Not only that, but that they're going about them the right way, because you may want to fix things. Things may be out of whack 100%, but it's how you go about fixing it that's important. And Janine is not going about it the right way. And, this is where she ends up hurting people. And she comes with a lot of that force. And remember, 1s do have a lot of anger, but they don't feel like it's right to show the anger. And so they're going to push it down, similar to a type 9. And so they end up releasing their anger in other ways. And that's where it comes across very dictatorial and very forceful with her, and trying to get her idea of a perfect society on its way. And, there are situations, again, if 1s aren't doing their work and if they're not healthy, they can have a very rules for thee, not for me mindset. And this is where it gets dangerous if someone is trying to attain a certain level of leadership. So that is it for Janine. And again, I chose the 2-wing for her because I think she does care. I think she does want things to be done right. She definitely has, because again, she's in lower health levels. It just is what it is. She has the pride of a 2. 2's passion is pride. And so we see her use that in the sense of, I know it's right, and I'm going to get it done the way I know it needs to be done, even though it's not being done the right way. It's being done in a really evil way. But healthy 1-wing 2s, amazing. So great. We need them in society. She is not one of those, unfortunately. And on that same topic, let's talk about Caleb. Caleb, again, Angela Elgort, love him. He is also a 1. I think he kind of vacillates back and forth between a 9-wing and a 2-wing, but he wants to do what's right in a different way. So for him, I think we really see him, he's decided on a moral compass for himself based on a set of rules that he's decided are it. He's like, this is the thing I want to use as my playbook, as my rule book, as my decision-making guide. And he's found that in erudite. So he's decided, okay, these people have got it going on. I like the set of rules they follow, and I want that to be how I base my decisions or how I come to conclusions, And so he's gone after that. And he is one that's prone to buying into a set of rules instead of looking at everything in a big picture and saying, this is right. Maybe don't agree with that. Okay, I can take things from this. This is perfect. He's not cherry picking. He's kind of buying into a whole set. And that can be great, but that can also be dangerous. And in this case, it ends up being dangerous. And so even though he believes he's doing right, he's causing a big wake of damage. And so that's where, again, ones have to be careful, like Janine. And obviously, he's kind of been brainwashed by Janine. So part of it isn't his fault, but still, you have to be very careful about what you buy into and what you base your rules on, because that can end up being your downfall. Okay. And like I promised you, let's really quickly go through the different factions and what types are likely to go into each faction. Okay. We'll do abnegation first because they start with an A. So abnegation, that's where you're going to find your twos and your ones and probably your fours. Yeah, maybe probably fours. They could also go somewhere else too. And also there are going to be types that maybe would work in various factions. I'm just kind of giving you a general overview. So abnegation is going to be twos, ones, and fours. And obviously that's because ones, they want to be upright and just, and they care a lot about unfairness. So if they see someone that is struggling, they're going to be like, they shouldn't be struggling. I'm going to go help them. The twos, of course, they're so caring, so giving. They're going to want to be there to help people. And the fours, they definitely care about injustice. They are prone to working at nonprofits. And similar to ones, they want to make sure that people are taken care of, and they want society to run in a healthy way. And then erudite is where you're going to find more of your fives, your threes, probably maybe your sixes as well, depending. Erudite obviously is more of the technology, science, math-based thing. So they're looking for logic. So you're going to find more logical types there. You also could find ones there for sure. Ones definitely enjoy logic. And so I think it's very heavily fives, although I'm definitely thinking there's a lot of ones there. And of course, sixes are actually more educational based than fives. A lot of people don't know that, but sixes do love their learning and their education, and they like applying the information that they learn, whereas fives may not apply it. They just kind of acquire it. And that's not the case for all of those. This is just a generalization again. And of course, I don't know why it took me so long to get to a one. That's ridiculous. Yes, of course, ones are in erudite. I've just said two that are in there. And then for candor, you're going to have your eights. There are going to be sixes in there, probably not a lot, but probably counterphobic sixes will go there, and probably type ones, to be honest, because they want to do things right. They want to be wholesome and good and just. So because they carry out the justice system, you're definitely going to see ones there. And of course, eights. Eights love justice. Eights and ones are often mistyped one another because of their love of justice. And if they're carrying out justice and being truthful and all of that, you're going to find those two types there. Again, you might find sixes, might find some fives, and you might find some fours. Fours are very truthful. They might say something and it might be like, hey, if it hurts your feelings, it's just the truth. So probably going to find them there too. And then Dauntless, oh my gosh, this is an 8-7 haven. They're just going to love it. You're also going to find some threes there who are going to want to climb up the ladder. And for Amity, you're going to find all your nines. Nines are going to be in Amity for sure. And maybe some in abnegation, but I would definitely say they find their happy place in Amity. And the sevens that don't do Dauntless, I think are definitely going to be in Amity. That feels like peaceful, fun, happy, that kind of a thing. And nines love routine. And so that's where Amity, they kind of have their set thing that they're doing and they just go for it. And you're probably going to also find some twos and fours in Amity as well as sixes. And I would say more self-preserving, and social sixes are probably going to be more in like candor or something like that. I don't think I missed any types. Did I? I don't think so. Anyways, hope that you enjoyed this episode and that you love this movie as much as I do. Be sure and check back Tuesday for a brand new episode, and be sure and follow along on Instagram. You can find the podcast there at Dude, I Love That Podcast, and you can find me at Hey, It's Liv James. Also, remember, if you love these kinds of episodes and you want to find out your Enneagram type, summer sessions for Enneagram life coaching are still going on through July. So be sure and check it out at this Instagram post right here with all the info. And thanks again so much for watching. See you next time. Bye.